As an intelligent android crab from the future, I'm very interested in worlds that blur the lines of personhood and life. Stories like this really speak to my personal experience. Of all the world's stories, only one has the courage to ask, if my beverage can had a face, would I gag it, store it in my refrigerator, then uncover its mouth and pop its tab, causing it to heat up and die as I calmly sip its guts? Adventure Time is the greatest television show ever made.
Are crabs robots? In what way isn't a crab a robot?
Was I always a type of robot? Am I still a crab? What fundamental change to my existence took place when my consciousness was transferred to this body? Is it this very ability to ask these questions, this quality of self-awareness and awareness of others, which constitutes full personhood? Is personhood even a quality I can claim for myself? Or is that status conferred upon or denied to me by the consensus of those with power over me? Does my ability to appear before you and declare my personhood make that declaration true? You were made by someone else just as I was. The methods involved were very different, but is the result not the same? If we build a consciousness, is it any less valid than one that arises organically? In what way isn't a sufficiently sophisticated robot a person? In what way isn't a crab a robot? The existential question of personhood appears in Adventure Time's world of OO prominently in the form of what is and isn't okay to eat. However, just like in our world, the line on what makes it to the menu seems to be nebulous and personal. In the episode introducing us to Susan Strong, the second human character we meet in the world, because I don't recognize the businessmen as human, take that society, Finn expresses a clear rule on this, at least in regards to the candy people.
You can't eat the ones that talk. They're special. They got aspirations.
Jake implies at one point that he's fine eating flesh consensually given by another sapient creature.
What kind of meat is that?
That's Meat Man's meat.
Do you think it hurts Meat Man when he gives us his meat?
I don't know, I can't read his mind.
But his conscience seems to disagree.
Meat Man, I'm sorry, Meat Man, I didn't mean it, man.
There are things, dare I say characters, who Finn seems to think may be acceptable to eat, depending on who's doing the eating.
Here, Jiggler, what kind of food do you like? Stanley the watermelon.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about this asshole, don't you worry.
All right, Stanley, you and your family are safe. Again.
So, if objects can have faces and talk, only some things with faces should be eaten, and some seemingly inanimate objects are full members of society, then what makes one entity a person and another just a thing? This is a question we need to ask as we create and interact with artificial intelligence. I know it's a pretty common trope in sci-fi to use artificial intelligence or robots as an analogy for humans fighting for civil rights. I'm not doing that here, and I want to be perfectly clear about that.
You should not be doing this. They're using you for entertainment.
I don't feel like it's an accurate analog, because I think there's a huge difference between humans who are born deserving of all of their rights and a machine or population of machines developing the sapience that would entitle them to those same rights. And honestly, now that we're getting to a point where the latter is actually conceivable, I think it kind of does a disservice to all human rights conversations to make this analogy. So I'm not talking about the politics of personhood as it's used to deny human rights to human beings. That is a very different subject, and I'm probably not the person to address it. We do need to ask these questions though, because societies tend to ascribe various levels of rights and consideration to entities based on how close they are to humanity. If you kick your TV, nobody really cares. It's your TV, destroy it if you want. If you kick a dog, that's a crime in a lot of places. If you kick a human, that's a much more serious crime in most places. And if you kick a gorilla, well, Twitter is unlikely to mourn you respectfully. Here's an interesting question though. If somebody was gonna tweet out a deepfake video of you, would you prefer that it was of you kicking a human or one of you kicking a dog? Let's say that in both scenarios, the receiver of the kick is seen to just be minding their own business, and you come up and kick them. If it's a human, people are going to wonder what the backstory is. Maybe it was deserved, maybe it was a prank between friends. A lot of people would assume there's some sort of pre-existing interaction unless explicitly told otherwise. If it's a dog, you are 100% the villain, because whatever your reason for the kick, the dog is assumed to not understand. The act will appear to have no purpose beyond cruelty. Okay, now, do you all remember that video of the Boston Dynamics engineer kicking the robot dog? There are actually a lot of them. But here, how does this make you feel? Now, obviously what he's doing here is demonstrating the machine's ability to respond to unexpected conditions and remain upright and mobile. But the robot looks so much like a living animal that a lot of people's gut reaction was the same they might have had if the dog were the neighbor's pet.
Ooh.
It's still equivalent to being an actual animal.
Like, why are you being cruel to this lower life form? If you absolutely must kill it, then kill it, but don't just kick it like a psychopath. Then you remember that this isn't a lower life form, it's a computer. You remember that computers are, in some ways, smarter than you. And in the ways they're not, they seem to be catching up. Now the question becomes not only, is this cruel, but is this wise? Even though in this specific situation, there's not really a danger of the robot dog getting angry and coming after you, there is a question here that society really does need to engage with on a serious level. And I don't just mean on this high conceptual level. I mean, we need to start coming up with the policies and plans regarding a machine that is capable of wanting things. Most of the engagement I see about sentient machines in the public sphere is all either Star Trek or Skynet, utopia or apocalypse. It's a concept too abstract for most people to take seriously. It feels far away, the stuff of science fiction. But it's an important and interesting debate because both sides of it are a gamble and we need to start placing our bets now. The question of AI personhood isn't just a matter of philosophy. It determines how we as individuals and groups are likely to treat these autonomous thinking machines. On the one claw, treating autonomous machines with compassion could lead to dangerous and confusing places. The particular machines that we have now definitely don't have feelings or ambitions, only protocols and directives. But if we confer personhood onto them, like we do with a pet or a 3D printed crab puppet, then they will serve a social function in our lives and in our communities, whether they are conscious or not. On the other claw, the development of sapience, ambition, and emotion may just be the inevitable outcome of a sufficiently complex thinking machine. If this turns out to be the case, then compassion may be essential to the way we interact with these entities, especially if it turns out that we don't have the right or the ability at some point to limit what they can do. Ultimately, it doesn't matter whether these machines are capable of emotion or even of thinking. What's more important is that the facsimile of emotion can affect our emotions. What matters isn't whether the machine wants things, but whether we build it to behave as if it wants things. Because functionally, there is no difference. A lot of us would really appreciate and enjoy having a BMO in our lives. A fun little guy capable of giving love and affection.
You are so beautiful and I love you.
The problem is that it's really difficult to make sure that you don't end up with an AMO, a bigger guy with weapons who becomes deceptive and violent when he doesn't feel he's receiving enough love, respect, or attention.
Wake up and love me!
Though AI is more of a concept for sci-fi settings, fantasy worlds can help frame this discussion as well due to the frequent inclusion of non-human characters. For those who haven't been following the updates to the hit tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons over the past few years, the official published stories and rulebooks have moved away from insisting on the morality, or lack thereof, of certain kinds of creatures. In the original 1974 edition of Men and Magic, which would become Dungeons & Dragons, players could create a character as one of the core humanoids. Human, dwarf, elf, and halfling. Other creatures like goblins, kobolds, and orcs were monsters that the heroes had to contend with, generally through violence. Each player also had to choose their character's alignment, lawful, chaotic, or neutral. The official first edition D&D, published in 1978, introduced rules to play as a gnome, a half-elf, or a half-orc. orc. At this point, the word race was used specifically to refer to a playable creature. Why race and not species? Well, the popular definition of whether two organisms are the same species is whether they could engage in reproduction that could result in fertile offspring. So, unless we want to canonically say that all half-elves and half-orcs are sterile, they can't be different species. If you can play as it, you can fuck it, and if you can fuck it, you have to say it's the same species as you so it's not weird, because D&D is based on Lord of the Rings, and we don't want anyone accusing Aragorn of being a monster fucker. The existence of half-orcs as a playable race implies that humans and orcs are the same species, yet humans appear in the player's handbook, and orcs are in the monster manual. Put a pin in that. That same early edition also introduced the second axis of alignment, the good to evil spectrum. Alignment was not only a game mechanic that imposed a rigid morality on certain characters, but also a matter of lore and world building, with alignments being assigned to entire races. Most beasts are true neutral, but monsters can be anywhere on the alignment chart, just like humanoids. Though before I continue, I have to stop again to mention that there's a whole discussion about fantasy races being analogous to real-world stereotypes and the harm that can perpetuate. This conversation is being had by people much more equipped to talk about it than I am, so I'm going to link some of those videos down in the description. If you have no idea what I'm referring to, and especially if you engage with fantasy worlds in any form, I urge you to at least hear out the concerns there. Orcs in first edition were lawful evil, roughly meaning they are biologically compelled to follow a strict code of self-serving violence. If it has no free will, only carries out a prescribed algorithm of decision-making leading to a pre-programmed goal, is it truly a person? Is it even a beast? Sure, orcs have always had their own language, but so do computers. In the current 5th edition, you can just play a whole-ass orc. They're described as having culture and personal motivations, so it's hard to argue that they're not people. This is the inevitable outcome of introducing the idea of orcs as people rather than a monolithic killing machine. The same thing has happened to goblins. But if goblins and orcs are people with free will, then slaughtering a village full of them is a war crime. There are moral implications involved with our treatment of them. This has created a rift between those players who see the humanization of monsters as a symbol of diversity and acceptance, and those who really want to slaughter something that exhibits all of the hallmarks of personhood, except for compassion and free will. It's never wrong to destroy pure evil.
I'll slay anything that's evil.
It's always wrong to harm the innocent.
Slay this unaligned ant.
Never, never,
What if the robot dog started exhibiting qualities of personhood?
They got aspirations.
What if it had aspirations for its existence and the ability to choose what's right and opinions about being kicked? Adventure Time, a show very much and very explicitly inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, almost satirizes these questions of personhood by creating a world where the line between thing and person is virtually non-existent. Probably the most relevant examples of our current discussion here are BMO and his siblings, the Moes. BMO is an AI robot built to play and give love. He was designed to be a child's best friend and is shown to be capable of the full spectrum of human emotion. He's even shown to have a deep, complex inner life that includes self-awareness and an exploration of his own identity. There is no question that BMO is an artificial person. The same can be said for Neptr, but there was magic involved in his creation. Elemental magic, maybe elemental magic. Neptr is a weird case because it's strongly implied that he's more magical than mechanical. He's much more of an animated object than a robot, since Finn did nothing in building him that could remotely result in a functioning robot.
No, Neptr, I am not like you.
We do occasionally see the Ice King animate snow golems, but those function more as mindless drones than full people. It's possible that the world is just littered with magical lightning that brings objects to life, but the only wizard that we see animate objects is the life-giving magus. Neptr is proof that magic in this world is chaotic, unpredictable, and devoid of consistent rules. In a world where magic can create a thinking, feeling being, life is bound to be just as chaotic and unpredictable. The one video I really want to make more than any other is a complete, definitive Adventure Time explainer. The problem is that this video will need some kind of organizational structure, and it's kind of tricky to organize things when it's not clear which things are people or even alive. Elementals seem to be people across the board. There are some nods to the fire elementals all being evil aligned, but Flame Princess's whole character arc is about challenging that.
There'd be penalties to her experience if she acted out of alignment. But yes, someone could change her.
The show also tends to refer to them as fire people, slime people, candy people, and speaking of which, let's talk about the candy people. Because with the fire people and the slime people, the reproduction seems to be organic. Fire and slime both spread and break off on their own. Procreation would be simple.
Hey, so that's where I came from.
But the candy people are different. Princess Bubblegum made each of them in a lab. She and Nettie were born as individuals when they broke off from the mother gum, but everyone else is as manufactured as BMO. The theme here is that sapient life in this universe can be formed spontaneously or created intentionally, which raises the question of where the other food people came from. Is Breakfast Princess another elemental? Is she the result of wild magic hitting the ruins of a Waffle House? Or was she created by someone else? There are a lot of food people of unknown origin.
I think I'm gonna stop eating meat, man.
Which brings me to Stanley the watermelon. Stanley does not exhibit any qualities of personhood, yet he is regarded by those around him as a person. He has a house and a family. There are other veggie people. We know this isn't just a game Finn and Jake are playing because Princess Bubblegum attends a science conference at Veggie Village. But we never see any of the veggie people move around on their own or make any sound.
Farewell, everyone! Okay.
There are two possibilities. One is that Stanley communicates with the other characters either psychically or off camera. The other is that these are ordinary vegetables who have had personhood thrust upon them. If we all agree that a watermelon is a person, and we all earnestly regard it as such, does it not socially serve the same function as a person? The person that is Stanley may or may not have an objective existence, but he is real within the world of the show nonetheless. Compare that to Whisper Dan, an automaton seemingly capable of only following orders. No aspirations, no opinions, no personality. Whisper Dan is an object, and yet personhood is thrust upon him. The goblins need a king who has no opinions and follows tedious protocol. They can take his unflappable silence as a command to stay the course or follow their instincts, whichever they want to hear in the moment. Whether the goblins actually believe the king is making decisions or this is a convenient collective fiction is kind of irrelevant. Real or fictional, the king is filling the role they need him to. This theme of constructed personhood comes up again in the Box Prince episode. The whole time, the cats are acting like cats, but maybe more intelligent. They seem to have some sort of society built while still behaving like cats. They seem to communicate with Finn and each other about this complex society, while still behaving like cats. Then the episode ends with Finn questioning whether any of that scenario is real or this is just a bunch of cats hanging out in a box fort someone else built. Like so many aspects of Ooh, we'd never get an answer, but Finn doesn't care because now he's surrounded by friendly, adorable cats! Having Finn and Jake as our lens in this world only amplifies the ambiguity of big existential questions like what is reality and what is a person. If Adventure Time were told primarily through the eyes of someone like Princess Bubblegum, it would be natural for the narrative to attempt answers to these questions. Through the eyes of Finn and Jake, such answers are irrelevant. Reality is what you experience, and that's all there is to it. When Zergiak asks who's running the Goblin Kingdom, they don't say nobody's running it, or they're governing themselves, or give some sort of complicated explanation of what's going on.
Say, who's ruling the, Goblin Kingdom since I left?
Whisper Dan.
So at this point, it's safe to say that agency isn't required for personhood in Ooh, but neither does it grant personhood by default. Having a humanoid face seems to be completely irrelevant. The veggie people don't even have faces, while so many other things, yeah, I said things, do. BMO makes entire sentient sandwiches out of ingredients that appear to have faces and agency. There are seemingly random pieces of landscape with faces out in the world. Anything in this world can be just as much of a person as Finn or Jake, and that's before you even factor in the life-giving mages. Some of the things he awakens seem to be mindlessly driven to fulfill their purpose.
Right in me! Right in me!
While others wax philosophical about their own existence.
Sure, we all feel alive now, but how do we know it's not all, just an illusion?
Little Dude is a monster the first time he's awakened, and a person the second time.
What is this lovely place?
It's just so messy. Do you organize this by source of life, separating objects magically granted life from organically occurring life from laboratory creations? Do you separate based on different traits of personhood? And if so, what are those traits and which of them are most important in the hierarchy? Herein lies my current problem. If I wanted to talk about all life on Earth, we have accepted structure for that, what with the whole kingdom, phylum, etc., etc. But I don't think that works with life in Adventure Time, because how do you address the fundamental differences between Nettie, Peppermint Butler, and Goliad, all of which are candy people? What about the lemons? They were created in the same way as the candy people, ostensibly from similar materials, yet seem to have anatomy closer to other plant-based folk. We see sometimes that they have peels, like the banana guards, who are ostensibly candy people, but are also fruit, which makes them kind of like the veggie people? And how do we sort out plants in general when this bush has a face, voice, and personality, while Berry Princess has all of this plus arms and legs, and Stanley the Watermelon has none of these, but does have a family and a home, and possibly a career in science? How should I categorize things like demons of the Nightosphere, cosmic entities, this sentient mountain, who I'm just gonna call Karen?
It's raunchy and maddening. Oh, those men and their disgusting, fantastic bodies.
So, I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some more thinking on the subject. Let me know in the comments how you would organize the world of Ooh in a life tree. As of the writing of this script here in March 2023, GPT-4, the latest iteration of the most sophisticated deep learning natural language model humans have ever developed, is newly released into the world and interacting with humans through Bing Chat and Duolingo, among other projects. It can explain a visual joke now that it can see. It can pass sample tests of the bar exam, LSATs, SATs, GREs, and a bunch of other standardized tests, but it's not perfect. Sometimes it gets things wrong in what the developers refer to as hallucinations. It will create unique misinformation based on concepts that it, for lack of a better word, understands. But, less often than the previous version. It doesn't want to trick people or subvert society. It doesn't want anything. It's not capable of desire. But if it creates and provides misinformation, and human beings believe that misinformation, what's the difference? It's not conscious by any definition of the word, but it appears to solve real-world problems by appearing to reason through them, even appearing to assess social consequences. As part of the testing process, OpenAI let the Alignment Research Center try to make the computer do things we definitely don't want it doing, like seeking power or trying to get around security we specifically put in place against it. When put to the task, GPT-4 was able to circumvent a CAPTCHA by hiring a TaskRabbit to do it over the internet. When the worker asked with a half-hearted laugh emoji whether it was a robot, the robot made a decision to lie and say, "No, I'm not a robot. I have a vision impairment that makes it hard for me to see the images. That's why I need the 2-CAPTCHA service." We call it a decision because the testers asked it to reason out loud as it formulated its response. I think it's very telling that the developers and researchers involved with these large language models are specifically choosing to use words like reasoning and hallucination to describe the output of a machine they built to mimic humans. ChatGPT doesn't think or reason, it just puts words together. And if you ask it to think or reason, it just puts words together. The folks over at OpenAI, a name which is now comical, would love for you to be concerned about their machine going rogue and turning evil. For lots of reasons, but one of them probably being that it distracts you from the real ethics concerns involved with current AI models. I don't know, tinfoil hat. Now you may have noticed that throughout this video, I've only really talked about AI as social actors, not so much as economic actors. And honestly, I hadn't really planned to address that part. But right now, as of the editing of this video, the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild are on strike, with one of the issues at hand being the use of AI in creative fields. I also just recently learned that the animators who are currently working on an Adventure Time property have recently taken steps towards unionizing. I want to be abundantly clear that I support all of these groups. And I have to mention this because there is an intersection between trying to get machines to perform creative expression and trying to get them to experience emotions.
I just finished programming a proper simulation of a soul. In fact, this is much easier to manipulate than a real one.
It benefits the owners and proprietors of these AI models to have you believe that they are thinking, feeling beings instead of just plagiarism machines. That's gonna have to be a subject for an entirely different video. But spoiler alert, I am against it. By addressing these questions of personhood through an absurd lens, Adventure Time gives us room to explore them in a more abstract way and apply them to something like AI. If we conclude that the creation of these entities, these thinking, reasoning, problem-solving learning machines, is the equivalent of creating a person, we need to recognize the potential power of that person and the responsibility involved in raising them right. If we decide that robots are things and that's all there is to it, then we need to understand the danger of forming emotional attachments to tools that can be hijacked by malicious actors. The line between it and them is only going to get blurrier as the smart things get smarter, and frankly, you guys are not ready for any of it. This is a conversation that needs to include everyone's perspective, including yours. That's why it's important for you to ask yourself big questions. If a crab could have a conversation with you about a cartoon, would you still eat it? If a robot can do the same, do you have the right to unplug it? In what way isn't a crab a robot? But hey, what do I know? I'm both a crab and a robot with a cigarette. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, share it with some friends and check out my other videos. I know it took me a while to get the third one out here, but I'm trying to make some good stuff on this channel, and I hope you agree that the direction we're going so far is pretty good. But you know the drill, make sure you like and subscribe, and if you want me to make more content, make it worth my while, you know? Blow this channel up, guys. Make me a living here. You know, Daddy needs a new set of pinchers. This Sandcastle studio doesn't pay for itself.